Hello there. Welcome along to the afternoon. Welcome along to Transfer Talk. Alexander Isac's future still isn't resolved. Will Liverpool come back in for the striker? Can he play for Newcastle again? Or has he already burned his bridges? Plus, could Tottenham sign Eberechi Eze from Crystal Palace? We'll discuss that deal and loads more over the next hour. Jack Grealish is on the verge of becoming an Everton player. How will he fare on Merseyside? Bournemouth sell another defender. Ilya Zabani heads to PSG. Manchester United have to sell if they are to buy new players. Will Ruben Amorim be able to bring in a midfielder before the end of the window? And could it be Carlos Baleba? Very good afternoon to you guys at home. Afternoon again to James Green. He is back by himself for this show, so we've got loads of James Green coming up. We're going to start off, though, with Eberechi Eze's future. Could he be set to leave Crystal Palace? So we've got a new line coming in from Tottenham, who remain interested in Eze. They've been long-standing admirers of the player, and he's been among their top number 10 targets this summer. Spurs are in the market for a number 10, a winger and a defender before the deadline. The long-term injury to James Maddison means that 2 attacking players are needed, not 1. They are assessing several options at number 10, including Eze and Nico Paz, and they've approached Man City over winger Savinho. Arsenal also expressed an interest in Eze earlier in the window, but it's understood that their focus at the moment is still on player sales. It could be a fascinating North London battle, James, for Eberechi Eze later in the window, or even coming up soon. So I'm going to go straight in at the deep end and ask you which of those 2 teams needs him the most.
I think that when you use the word need, you only have to look at Tottenham's current situation with James Maddison, as you mentioned, ruled out for likely the majority of the season with an ACL injury. Heung-min Son now moved on to LAFC. They need more bodies in, do Tottenham. You know, they're in the Champions League this season. They've got to compete on all fronts. They need some quality in that attacking area of the pitch. They've brought in Mohamed Kudus, likely play on the right-hand side. Talks about trying to go after Savinho, who can play right or left. Actually, if you look at his stats, certainly for Manchester City, he scored more goals on the left-hand side than he did on the right. So potentially that could be where he fits. For Tottenham, we know they went for Morgan Gibbs-White earlier on in the transfer window. That didn't happen. He committed to staying at Nottingham Forest. So it's very clear that that's been an area they're looking at. So Eberechi Eze, they've been admirers of him for a while. Understand that that would be a player you would say they need. Arsenal have already been very active in the transfer window, spending, close to around £200 million to bolster their squad. Outgoing's going to be key for Arsenal. They need to probably clear the likes of Fabio Vieira, attacking midfielder, Reece Nelson, wide player. So players in that area, potentially Leandro Trossard as well. That would then clear maybe a need for more depth in that position, more competition for the likes of Martin Ødegaard. I think with Arsenal's perspective, though, Matt, they've got 2 very young players that they fully believe in Ethan Nwaneri and Max Dowman. Max Dowman, one of the most talented 15-year-olds I've ever seen play.
Incredible, yeah.
He was utterly incredible when he played pre-season game against Villarreal. Came off the bench, completely changed that game. Just looks like somebody playing above his years. For Arsenal, they want to make sure that there's pathways in the squad for those players to develop. Now, they've got a question on their minds. Is bringing in a player like Eberechi Eze going to potentially block that pathway for the next 2, 3, 4 years for those players? And that's a question they've got to ask themselves. Or is their desire to win now and be successful right now overarching that? And that's a question they have. So, look, I think Tottenham need the player more, but Eberechi Eze is a talented player, man.
Yeah, he is, and I'm sure a lot of teams would love to have him, but Palace don't have to sell him, do? He's got years left on his contract.
2 years left, yeah.
Right. But Steve Parish's comments were very interesting on the weekend at the Community Shield, weren't they? And he basically said, and he was talking mainly about Mark Guéhi, that really, they can't hold on to a player like that if a big offer comes in, because he's in the last year of his contract. So in terms of holding on to their stars, Crystal Palace, and I'm talking about the likes of JP Mateta as well, Adam Wharton, Eze and Gay, the fact that Gay's in the last year of his contract, does that make him a lot more gettable than the rest?
Yeah, definitely. I think Steve Parish's comments were pretty clear that he can't afford to let any player go on a free transfer at the end of their contract. So this is their opportunity, the last chance to maximise any transfer value. They could get the likes of £50 million for someone like Mark Gay. He's been at the club since 2021. They rejected offers last summer from Newcastle, rejected an offer in January from Tottenham too. So likely now is the chance to cash in. And with Eberechi Eze as well, 2 years left in his contract, this is their last chance to maximise a huge transfer fee they could get for Eberechi Eze, because it will decline as he goes into his final couple of years of his contract. So look, it is their chance. It wasn't music to Crystal Palace's fans' ears hearing Steve Parish say that, but the Palace owner's being realistic in his approach.
Yeah, no, he was, absolutely. Right, let's get to Everton, because they are closer to signing Jack Grealish. Video Connor is at Everton's training ground for us. How close, Finney, is this move now to being announced?
Yeah, we are expecting an announcement today, because Jack Grealish has been here since around 10 o'clock this morning. He arrived just a little bit after the Everton first team squad had reported for training. Of course, yesterday he underwent a medical, yesterday afternoon, that is, ahead of the completion of this season-long loan move to Everton from Manchester City. Everton, of course, having that option at £50 million to buy Jack Grealish next summer. We're told as well that this season-long loan deal is worth around £15 million. Everton, of course, making their move, starting talks with Manchester City, and then moving pretty quickly as well to get this deal done. We're also told that Jack Grealish has gone above and beyond to get this deal through as well. It shows you how keen he is for regular first-team football. Made just 7 Premier League starts for Manchester City last campaign, and a lot of the motivation for Jack Grealish, not only to get back playing regular Premier League football, but of course to force his way back into the England reckoning as well, ahead of those friendlies next month against Andorra and Serbia, but of course looking further ahead towards the World Cup at the end of the forthcoming season as well. So Jack Grealish making it clear that he wants to be part of things here under David Moyes. David Moyes has said in the past that back in 2021, in fact, that Jack Grealish was possibly the best player in the Premier League at that point, and now Grealish is going to get the opportunity to reignite his career under the Everton manager, and we expect, as I say, that announcement to come later today.
David Moyes was vocal, wasn't he, in the past about wanting a few signings, so can we expect further incomings?
Yeah, he certainly needed more than a few. When you consider those players that were out of contract as well, you're losing players like Dominic Calvert-Lewin. But he said, I think early on in the piece, that it was 9 or 10 players that he needed to get in during this transfer window. Jack Grealish will become the 6th signing of the summer for Everton, but there's still plenty of areas they need to get further options in. And I'm thinking certainly at right back, ideally they'd like to bring in a defensive midfielder as well. And we know that they've tried to bring in an attacking wide right option as well. Tyler Dibbling, they've had 3 bids rejected by Southampton, perhaps looking to turn their attention elsewhere. They've had a look certainly at Leicester's Abdul Fattah as well, but as yet no movement as regards that. I still wouldn't necessarily say that their efforts to sign Tyler Dibbling are dead either, but what it does need for that to happen is obviously for Southampton to drop their asking price and come in with a bit of a compromise really to get that deal across the line if it is to happen before that transfer deadline. I think as well, when you look at the options that David Moyes has up front and the way he's spoken, you've got Tieno Barry, who's come in this summer relatively inexperienced, particularly at a Premier League level, obviously, because he's still to figure in a Premier League game. On top of that, Beto, and again, I just think that maybe he would like that extra bit of experience and know-how in that forward line as well, just to supplement what he's already got. Don't forget, there's also Yusuf Chamiti here as well, but still very much early in his footballing career as well. So there's still, we're expecting plenty of business still from Everton in this window, in those areas that I mentioned. But again, the next one through the door is Jack Grealish. He's here at Everton's Finch Farm training ground, and we await that official confirmation that he has joined Everton on the season-long loan from Manchester City.
And looking forward to you giving it to us. Thanks very much, Vinny. Right, so potential Manchester City departures. We'll just follow that up now as well. Potential incoming as well, and speak live to our South American football expert, Tim Vickery. Also find out a little bit about a few other players from South America who could find themselves into the Premier League. Good to see you again, Tim. The last time you were here in the studio next to me, you're back in Rio now?
I am, yeah, where it's alarmingly cold. I want my money back. I've been the victim of a cruel hoax.
Tell you, it's lovely here. It's 32. It's 32.
So I'm told.
Come back
I don't
here.
expect sympathy. In a couple of months' time, the boot will be on the other foot. But in the meantime, you're sweltering, I'm suffering.
Don't worry, you'll get absolutely no sympathy in this studio from me and James. Let's start with a man who's used to sunnier climes just like you, Rodrigo. Now, he's been linked before with Arsenal, but recently he's been linked with Manchester City. Could you see him going to the Etihad?
Oh, it's intriguing, isn't it? On the one hand, and surely this interest from City is a confession that they've made mistakes letting players like Julian Alvarez and Cole Palmer go. But Rodrigo from Real Madrid, we talked today on the 12th of August, and you think, no, it can't happen. But let's fast forward to the 24th of August. Real Madrid will have played 2 games. Where has he been able to fit in to Xabi Alonso's new Real Madrid? The evidence from the Club World Cup for him wasn't particularly impressive. I think the only game he started wide right, and he really doesn't want to play there. Always remember what Jude Bellingham said about him last year, that he's probably the most talented player in the Real Madrid squad and the one who has to sacrifice himself most for the team. Perhaps the entry of Kylian Mbappe has just unbalanced things a little bit, and Rodrigo has been the one who's had to sacrifice. So, if we fast forward a couple of weeks and Rodrigo feels himself not as important at Real Madrid as he'd like to be, there are very, very few clubs he could go to that wouldn't be a significant step down. Man City, I think, wouldn't be a significant step down. Let's monitor this space. As of today, perhaps unlikely. Fast forward to the 24th, 25th of August, possible. And it could be a kind of last-minute transfer window saga going on there.
It would be a fascinating move, that, wouldn't it? But we also know that Pep Guardiola likes a smaller squad, so there will be some outgoings too. And this is interesting because Savinho is wanted by Spurs. In fact, they've been having talks with him, even though Man City don't really want him to leave. But would you be surprised that he could leave so early into his City career?
Yeah, I think it is. It would be a surprise. He didn't have a bad debut season with City, but he didn't have the impact that many were expecting, and perhaps not the impact that he himself was expecting. I don't really think that's so much his fault. I think that's City, that little collapse they had after Rodri got injured. But what's crucial here is the timing. Remember, we're on the countdown now to the World Cup. And Savinho was beginning to establish himself in the Brazil team. He played 6 World Cup qualifiers in a row, either starting or off the bench. And then in came Carlo Ancelotti. Now, Ancelotti's first squad for qualifiers in early June, Savinho wasn't even in it. Now, I'm sure that has set off alarm bells. So I'm sure in his mind, there must be a temptation. Well, if I go to a club that gives me Champions League football where I can be more important than City, perhaps I can shine, catch Ancelotti's eye and attention and get myself back in international contention in time for the World Cup. I think if it wasn't for the World Cup, it's very unlikely that we'd be discussing this because I'm not sure that he'd be interested. But in the countdown to 2026, I think that's putting a little bit of dynamite behind this one.
OK, let's talk about a player who we expect to be on his way to Sunderland. Well, he's already in the northeast, actually, but expect this to be confirmed soon. And that is Omar Alderete, who's been signed from Getafe. What can fans expect from him? Is he a bit of a Paraguayan hard man?
Well, he's got that, yes. I mean, the legendary resilience of Paraguayan defending. And he's part of a national team who have done remarkably well. It's 1 defeat in 10 since the new coach came in, and they're on the verge of qualifying for the World Cup, which didn't look likely at all. just over a year ago. What he offers, I think, is that kind of resilient and aggressive defending, but also a left foot. He can play on his best position, I think, is a left-sided centre-back. But he can also play at left back. And he gives you the option of playing out from the back, opening up the field with his left-footed passing, because he's got quite a sweet left foot on him. Battle-hardened. This isn't a kid. You're not taking a flyer on him. This is someone who's been around, from Paraguay to Argentina and Germany, and then more recently a few seasons in Spain. From the newly promoted club, you really want someone like that, I think, coming in. Someone battle-hardened with a little bit of quality as well.
All right, great stuff. Let's finish with a player who's not in the Premier League now, but could be in the future, because Chelsea are considering a move for the Bayer Leverkusen and Ecuador defender Piero Hincapié. That's according to some reports that we've seen. Chelsea in need of some defensive cover, particularly with Levi Colwill possibly out for even the season, but at least for a large part of it. Hincapié, part of a very good Leverkusen side, in fact, part of an invincible side. So could he be the answer to Chelsea's defensive issues?
I think he certainly could. You mentioned Leverkusen, but also Ecuador. Ecuador and their defensive unit, they've qualified for the World Cup. They've conceded 1 goal in the last 9 games. It's an extraordinary defensive record. Chelsea fans remembering the final of the Club World Cup, one of the things that facilitated their victory was the absence of one of those Ecuadorian centre-backs, William Pacho, who was suspended and I think was badly missed. Hincapié is his international colleague. He's only 23. He's played almost 50 times for Ecuador already. I'm surprised he hasn't been linked with the Premier League already. And when he first came through, I was a little bit dubious. I thought he was a little bit spindly, would suffer physically, and he was making mistakes. But I think he was making mistakes because Ecuador threw him in so young. But he's really, really come through very well. And some of the things I just said about Alderete also apply to Hincapié. He's left-footed. He can play left-back role as well as left-sided centre-back, or in a back 4 or a back 3. He's quick, and Ecuador can defend with a very, very high line. And he's combative. He loves bringing the ball out of defence. There are so many things that Hincapié would offer, and I'm quite surprised he hasn't been linked with the Premier League already. And there's another one. Ecuador have another one. He's currently playing right back in the national team just because they can't fit him into centre-back. Only 21 years old, Joel Ordóñez, who plays for Bruges at the moment, may be on his way to Marseille, but there is interest from Premier League clubs wanting to hijack this move. So one of the success stories at the moment in international football is that Ecuadorian defensive unit, and Hincapié for Chelsea, I think, would make perfect sense. Ordóñez for lots of other Premier League clubs would make sense as well. Watch this space.
Oh, we will. Tim, always great to speak to you. Great stuff as ever. Very sorry to hear it's not flip-flop weather anymore, though.
I don't wear flip-flops. I don't hold with them. I'm a traditionalist on this one. I won't have them.
I love it. It's just strolling down Ipanema Beach with some nice brogues on. Cheers,
Espadrilles.
Espadrilles.
That's the secret.
Thanks, Tim. All right, so much more to come on Transfer Talk. There's another outgoing at Bournemouth to tell you about, and we are live to Nottingham Forest. Will James McAtee be joining them? Stay with us. Welcome back. We've got a couple of bits of breaking news for you. First of all, an independent regulatory commission has imposed an 8-week suspension and mandatory face-to-face education programme on the former Premier League referee David Coote for a breach of FA rules. It was alleged that the referee acted in an improper manner and or used abusive and or insulting words about Jurgen Klopp in a video that was recorded around July 2020 and appeared on social media in November 2024. It was also alleged that his actions constitute an aggravated breach, which is defined in FA Rule E3.2, as they included a reference, whether express or implied, to nationality. David Coote subsequently admitted the charge. The Regulatory Commission imposed his sanctions following a hearing. So the former Premier League referee David Coote has had an 8-week suspension imposed on him and faces mandatory face-to-face education programme. Some other breaking news regarding Crystal Palace, because they have released a statement in response to the CAS decision yesterday, where they've been demoted to the Conference League. They've released a statement, and it's a strongly worded statement as well. This is what Crystal Palace have said in that statement. At a time when we should be celebrating our victory in the Community Shield at Wembley, the decision by UEFA and followed by the Court of Arbitration for Sport shows that sporting merit is rendered meaningless. When we won the FA Cup against Manchester City on that momentous day in May, our manager and players earned the right to play Europa League football. We have been denied that opportunity. It appears that certain clubs, organisations and individuals have a unique privilege and power. This growing and unhealthy influence has shattered the hopes and dreams of Crystal Palace supporters and does not bode well for aspirational teams all over Europe competing to progress when rules and sanctions are unevenly applied in the most flagrant way. While we respect the CAS Tribunal members, the process is designed to severely restrict and, in our case, to make it almost impossible to receive a fair hearing. Although we continue to take legal advice on the next steps, we will compete in the Conference League with the same determination and will to win that characterises this incredible club. So that is the statement from Crystal Palace in response to their demotion to the Conference League from the Europa League, and it's a very strong worded statement as well. We'll have more on that throughout the day. Nottingham Forest, of course, benefited from that demotion. We can go to Forest now and speak to Anton Tolui for an update on their transfer activity. Afternoon, Anton. Let's start with James McAtee then. Could Forest be closing in on a replacement for Anthony Elanga?
Yeah, there's definitely an air of optimism here at Nottingham Forest that a deal will get done for James McAtee. He's an interesting player, isn't he, considering he was so highly regarded at Manchester City, but he was very much a substitute for most of last season, didn't get his first start in the Manchester City team until, April. But when he came into the team, he played quite well, played on the right-hand side, and I think, he contributed with a goal against Palace when they scored 5 goals on that day, and he started again against Villa as well and ended up chipping in with a good performance there as well. He's an interesting player, isn't he? Because I think Nuno Espirito Santo, the head coach here at Nottingham Forest, will be really pleased to have not just a promising young player, but a player with packed full of potential and versatility as well. Lots of Nottingham Forest fans saying, well, where does he fit into this Forest team? Is he an 8? Is he a 10? Does he play out wide? Well, the fact of the matter is, Nuno Espirito Santo can sit there and figure out where he wants to play. One of the most potentially one of the most sort of encouraging and exciting young players in the country at 22. He's obviously been a big part of this very successful England under-21 team as well. And McAtee is now at a time in his career where he wants to kick on and show what he can do in the Premier League. We obviously understand that there's been interest from clubs in the Bundesliga, for example, Borussia Dortmund and Bayer Leverkusen, and interest from other Premier League teams. But it's thought the personal teams won't be a problem to get McAtee in. It's just a case of finding a deal that suits both Nottingham Forest and Manchester City. It seems as though that it's taken a step in the right direction for McAtee to come here to Nottingham Forest.
And as I just mentioned there, with that breaking news regarding Crystal Palace, who've released that statement after their demotion to the Conference League. It's something that has benefited Nottingham Forest, of course, so they will play in the Europa League. Will we see that accelerate the club's transfer plans? Now they have that certainty of where they're going to be.
Yeah, undoubtedly. It definitely will. Forest now have the certainty that they will be in the Europa League, which is obviously a more prestigious, more lucrative and more appealing competition for players to come in. And Nottingham Forest intend to be busy in the last 3 weeks of the transfer window. Nuno Espirito Santo wants to increase his squad, and he wants to increase the quality of his squad as well. Of course, there's a lot of noise around them losing Anthony Elanga. They've already brought in Dan Ndoye from Bologna as his replacement, but they want a left-back, they want a centre midfielder, and they want another winger as well. Because obviously, look, Nottingham Forest going to be playing more games next season, 8 games guaranteed in the Europa League group phase alone. So they want more players, they want more competition, and they want to be active in the final 3 weeks of the season. So it's going to be, we know Nottingham Forest can be quite busy towards the end of the window. It looks like it's going to be that way again, starting with James McAtee. And like I said, those other 3 positions are what they're going to be targeting between now and the end of the window.
Nice one. Good chatting to you, Anton. Right, we've got new transfer updates reaching us all the time here on Transfer Talk. Bournemouth are interested in the FC Midtjylland winger, Dario Osorio. Anthony Iraola likes his profile and he wants him in the squad for the forthcoming campaign, particularly with the interest intensifying for Dango Ouattara. And he is a player we'll be speaking about after the break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Transfer Talk. Let's get to Newcastle because we've had some developments in the Alexander Isac saga. The Athletic and David Ornstein this morning are reporting that the player is adamant he will not play for Newcastle again, even if the window closes. Well, this is what former Newcastle midfielder Jeff Hendrick had to say about the Isac situation earlier today on Good Morning Transfers.
From what I know of players there who are friends with him, it's definitely out of character. It's something you don't expect from, I'd say, a lot of players. But you know, when a big club, don't get me wrong, Newcastle are massive, but when a club like Liverpool have come in with the price tag as well, you know, there's not many ways you can sort of force your way out of a club, and it seems like he's picked this one, and that's the route he's going down, which, you know, will be hard to accept for everyone who's you know, a Newcastle fan or players. It's tough, but I think footballers, you're with each other every day. You understand if that's the stance he's took. You know, you accept it. You probably won't see him day to day in any way where he'll be training away from the group. But you know, if things were to turn around and he wasn't to go, I think, you know, after a couple of days, the lads, they'll take him back in. They know he's going to be great for the club as well. So, you know, they'd be hoping that Newcastle can hold on to him, and then, you know, they'll make up and they'll get playing games together. And like I said, you're there with each other every day. You're not going to hold a grudge and not talk to him for the rest of the season. So
is it that simple? It's just like, you know, like almost like friends falling out, little fallout, couple of days,
yeah,
dust settled,
kiss and make up,
back in.
Yeah, I think they'll be okay, yeah.
It was great having Jeff in earlier. He says the players will be fine with it. They'll kiss and make up. But what about the club? Is there a way back for him now, James, if he has said that he won't ever play for Newcastle again?
It's going to be tough, isn't it? I mean, if you take what Eddie Howe was saying and also his demeanour and body language during those press conferences, he looked quite broken by it all. It's clearly affected him. He was very open about the fact it's affecting a lot of other players within the squad as well, the situation going on. It can't be easy. It's your talisman, your star striker who scored so many goals, 23 in the Premier League last season. He was exceptional. People are talking about potential injury record that he had, but he only missed, I think it was 3 or 4 Premier League games last season. He's so crucial to Newcastle, and if Newcastle want to keep growing as a side, it's hard to see how they're able to do that when you take Alexander Isac out of that situation. It was interesting to hear Jeff Hendrick say, as a player, you know, we get over these things. We brush it off. It's not necessarily too big a deal, and these things happen sometimes, and we'll welcome the player back. I can't imagine he's an unpopular lad. He seems very popular in the dressing room, certainly was last season. Hopefully, if he does stay, he's able to integrate himself back in. But the club can't be happy with it. And with the statement coming out this morning and the reports that he's refusing to play for Newcastle, even if he doesn't move on, even if he stays out post the transfer window, that's not something the club wants to be hearing at all. That makes it very uncomfortable.
Yeah, and also because it might affect, you know, how other clubs react. So, for example, Liverpool, if they know this, that he's refused to play for the club again regardless, does that in some way strengthen their hand?
Look, first of all, for a buying club, they want the player to come to their club regardless. So how that player is able to do it, especially when they're under contract, like Alexander Isac is, under a 3-year contract, the selling club, Newcastle, don't have to sell the player. They're in no rush to sell him. They don't need to sell him for maximal value. They can wait another year if they need to and still recoup 100 million plus for the player. For Liverpool in this regard, who are the most interested party, who've had a bid rejected by Newcastle United for Alexander Isac, they want the player. So they'll look at it and go, OK, this is a player that's really keen to move. I don't think they'll necessarily see this as an individual circumstance that the behaviour is there for a certain reason. He wants this move. He's desperate to move to Liverpool. But it is interesting as fans, you look at it from the outside, look at how players react. We've seen with Johan Wissa. He moved back and then refused to train, didn't he, with his Brentford teammates. Originally, we understand he's back doing some training now. But then on the flip side, we're talking about Crystal Palace, and we're probably going to talk a little bit more about Crystal Palace, the likes of Mark Gehi, likely to move on this window. He's still turned up training. He's still competing at the highest possible level. Eberechi Eze is not pushing for a move out of Crystal Palace, still training hard, still popular in the dressing room. There's no noise coming out that there's unhappiness as well. So look, everybody reacts differently, don't they? But it's a messy situation. And, you know, we talk so much about transfer sagas. This is an ultimate transfer saga right now. And until the close of the deadline, we won't know which way it's going to go.
Yeah, I'm sure Newcastle fans are sick of hearing about it, to be honest with you. Let's give them some slightly better news then, because we are expecting news on Malik Thiaw's move from AC Milan to Newcastle to be confirmed fairly soon. He's been having a medical at the club. What about Thiaw? Is this a signing that could excite the fans?
I'm not necessarily sure it will excite the fans. I'm not sure any centre-back particularly excites fans. They're there to do a job. They're not there to do the spectacular. And that's all respect to all centre-backs. I once upon a time was a centre-back myself, albeit for a Sunday League side, so very, very different. Look, for Newcastle, the importance is building the squad still and continue to redevelop the squad. They've got centre-backs like Fabian Schär, 33 years old in his final year of his contract, likely will move on at the end of next season. Well, Malik Thiaw's a right-sided centre-back, so he can come in and slot in that place, a 24-year-old as well. Jamal Lascelles, another centre-back in his 30s, in his last year of his contract too. But the AC Milan defender, looks set to come in. He did miss 7 of the last 9 Serie A games for Milan. He was an unused substitute, so that's quite interesting to see. But it looks as though Newcastle, despite what's going on with Alexander Isac, are still ensuring they're attacking his transfer window. Anthony Elanga's come in, Aaron Ramsdale come in, now Malik Thiaw, and they're still continuing to look for more players to come in, regardless of what's going on with this Alexander Isac situation.
We'll be talking about it a lot more over the next
sure we
few
will,
days.
Matt.
Of course we will. Let's move on to another story that we've seen this morning. It's in The Sun, actually, and Manchester United have seen an opening bid, according to The Sun, for Brighton's Carlos Baleba rejected, and Brighton say that he is not for sale. Is anyone who wants to buy Carlos Baleba likely to need very deep pockets in this window?
Deep pockets. We have to look.
That rules me out, I'm afraid.
Unfortunately, I don't think you'll be able to. Me neither. A lot of people won't. There's certainly going to be a comparison to Moises Caicedo and the money they recruit from that deal from Chelsea. Was it close to £110 million, around that sort of mark? That's what Brighton will want. They don't need to sell the player. And that's always Brighton's stance. They don't need to sell. They're in such a great financial position because of the work that Tony Bloom, Paul Barber is doing, David Weir's doing in regards to the technical aspects of it, and searching and finding these star players that they're developing and selling for big money. With regards to Baleba, though, 21 years old, he maybe struggled a little bit at the start, understandably so, coming into a new league. But last season, he was utterly terrific. And actually, I've got a few comparison stats with Moises Caicedo to compare the two from last season. So Moises Caicedo, tackles made 3.1 per game. Carlos Baleba, 2.7 per game. OK, fine. Aerial duels 1.4 per game for Baleba, just 1 per game for Moises Caicedo. Total duels 6.8. Carlos Baleba, 6.4. Moises Caicedo. Their numbers are so similar. Same clearances, 1.5. Interceptions, 1.6 to Baleba, 1.4 to Caicedo. The reason why I'm saying these numbers, because these are the stats, the data that all clubs are looking at when they're recruiting these players, and they are so similar to each other. That is why Brighton will be looking and going, hold on a minute, stats are very similar. We managed to get X amount from Chelsea for Moises Caicedo. We will look to recoup something like that. But the stance from Brighton must be clear. The player's not for sale. They don't want to sell him this window.
Is it a meteoric rise as well, like Caicedo? And speaking of meteoric rises, I mean, that's what's happened with pretty much all of the Bournemouth backline. And they've confirmed, Bournemouth, today, another sale of a key defender, because Ilya Zabani is going to PSG. The deal is worth £54.5 million guaranteed, with add-ons on top of that. Firstly, from the player's point of view, what a move for him. You know, going to best team in the world right now, playing unbelievable football, European champions.
Unbelievable move. Unbelievable. I sat down and spoke to this player 2 years ago. We sat down when he first joined. I sat with him and Milos Kerkez. Interesting about him was, and the difference, he was married really young. He got married really young, really settled in his life. Football is his life now, alongside his family. He's got a young family, he's got a young child. And he's very mature for his age, and what a great move this is. And we shouldn't gloss over the business that Bournemouth have done with Heisen to Real Madrid, Kerkez to Liverpool, now Zabarnyi to PSG, recouping around £150 million. It's an astonishing bit of business, but hard work for Bournemouth now to replace those players.
Well, that's it. I mean, have they done that yet? Have they got more work to do in the window?
Well, Bafodi Diakite is set to join, so centre-back set to join for around £34 million from Lille. They've signed Aidan Chauffeur from Rennes, the left-back, to come in for Kerkez. But if you do look at the centre-back options, Marcos Senesi, Chris Mepham, James Hill, it's not necessarily at the point where you go, as a Bournemouth fan, we're set now for the new Premier League season. So it seems like another body is needed. They've got time to do it. They've certainly got money to play with from what they've earned as well. So, look, interesting business. They've got to sell some players to bring in new players, but you trust Bournemouth to do that with the recruitment they've done recently, which has been superb.
Right, OK, we've got just a further update from Bournemouth to tell you about, because Brentford's proposed deal for Dango Ouattara is not expected to progress until Bournemouth can find a replacement. The interest in Bayer Leverkusen's Amin Adli is understood to be cooling, and Bournemouth are looking at other options. One player of interest to Brentford is the Rennes striker Arnaud Kalimuendo. Contrary to reports, there are not talks to sign him yet, however. So that obviously could have a knock-on effect with Johan Wisser's future as well, and him possibly going to Newcastle. Right, stay with us. It's going to be an interesting season at the top of the Premier League table, but it's going to be very interesting at the bottom as well. All three of the promoted sides spending big. Will be assessing their business after this break. Welcome back to the final part of Transfer Talk. We're going to turn our attention now to the newly promoted teams, and no doubt they haven't held back in the market. James, have the three promoted teams looked at the last couple of years and basically said, if we don't spend big, we've basically got no chance?
I think the reality is now how the Premier League's set up, that if you don't spend big, you're going to be so far behind. It is very, very difficult for promoted clubs. There's absolutely no doubt in that. The money involved in being in the Premier League is so much that if clubs do survive one season, they propel themselves out and they're able to improve their squads tenfold. I mean, we are seeing transfer records being broken left, right and centre. Sunderland, for example, I think have broke theirs 3 times already in this window. And clubs have got to find ways of doing it. And it's not necessarily all about just chucking loads of money in, but it's how they're going to do it and the variety of ways they're going to do it. So this is Sunderland's business so far. So far, Sunderland have made 10 signings already in this window. Habib Diarra, youngster, they've got high hopes for him. Young player, 21 years old, and, you know, smashed their transfer record as well. We know Enzo Lafi, they know that player well, was with them last season as well. Simon Adingra, Premier League experience with Brighton. I think he's underrated myself. I think he's a very good player. You need those sparkly players, as I like to call them, out wide, creative, who are going to do something different. But the standout, without a doubt, and still could be one of the signings of the window, Granit Xhaka. And I remember standing here when the talk was first came about, Sunderland interested in Granit Xhaka. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that was possible, that Sunderland are going to attract somebody of the quality and ilk of Granit Xhaka, but they've done it and they've got him in, and it was almost like a missing piece for Regis Eberechi. He wanted that experience in the middle of the park and somebody who's got a vast amount in the Premier League. So they've got the experience, they've got some young talent, they've got some with Premier League experience as well, and a couple of smart signs. Mark Gui at the bottom, 19-year-old from Chelsea, on loan, just a season on loan, but a real talented young player, a lot to prove, wants to establish himself at Chelsea. What a great opportunity, a year in the Sunderland team.
OK, so that's Sunderland. They clearly look to have mainly gone for young players, but, you know, obviously got the vastly experienced Xhaka in there as well. Let's have a look at who Leeds have brought in. Now, they haven't spent as big. They have spent quite a bit already, but they've brought in the least numbers. They brought in 7. That's the least of the 3 promoted sides. So what do you think of their business now they've gone about it?
So with Sunderland, they've spent around 130 million, for example. Leeds, around 75 million here. Now, the standout for me, again, this is where you see promoted clubs attacking the window very, very differently. So for Daniel Farke, his aim has been a certain mould of player. A lot of these players are 6 foot plus, so he wants a physically imposing team to attack the Premier League. He also wants a certain age range in his players. 5 of the signings, 26 years old, 2 of them, 27 years old. So you can clearly see wants some experience, but still players with plenty to give and plenty to improve upon when taking on the league. The standout, again, out of this list for me is Sean Longstaff, the experience with Newcastle. Again, a real quality player. He's the kind of player you want as a promoted side, a workhorse in the middle of the park. They've actually improved the whole spine of the team, which I think, again, has been key for Daniel Farke. So, again, interesting to see a different way of doing it.
All right, we'll look at Burnley's squad in a moment. First of all, we had the former Burnley midfielder Jeff Hendrick with us this morning. This is what he made of Burnley's business so far.
I think it's a good mix. You've got some young players who are leaving big clubs and hungry to go and play. Then you've got some older players, as you'd say, with lots of experience. Like you said, Kyle Walker, he's been there. He's won nearly everything. He's a leader. He has high expectations when it's training and game time as well. So it'd be fantastic. And then the likes of Martin Dubravka, who I played alongside, he's a great keeper. Maybe he was a bit unlucky with injuries while I was there with him, and then other keepers came in and replaced him and all that sort of stuff. But no, I think they've got a very good mix of young and old players.
Right, well, Burnley have brought in the most players, 13 they've brought in. Would you see a pattern in the type of player they're bringing in?
Yeah, again, a mixture. Only one player over 30. Carl Walker, but what an experienced player that is. 35 years old, but we know what Carl Walker can bring. Again, Axel Tuanzebe, really good player, defender, used to be at United. Ipswich didn't want to let him go. Ipswich wanted him to stay, but managed to get a move to the Premier League. Again, a good player. Armando Broja, Premier League experience, a couple of Chelsea players. The experience of Martin Dubravka. I know Jeff Hendricks was talking himself about what a guy he is. So again, more players than the other two. Interesting to see all three different aspects of attacking the new Premier League season.
Yeah, but all three of them are giving it a good go anyway.
Giving it
And
everything.
we could expect quite a few more dealings from all three of them as well.
So.
You never know. James, thank you very much for today. Right, we are back tomorrow with Good Morning Transfers. Myself and James will be joined by Dan Gosling. That'll be very, very good fun. 9 a.m. for that. Transfer Talk is also back tomorrow at midday, and we'll have Julien Laurent with the two of us. So lots of information on European players, etc. from Julien. And the Transfer Show is back later on today. It's at 5 and at 6 p.m, a little bit earlier because of Soccer Special. So put that in your diaries. Enjoy the rest of the day.